Welcome to Know Your Sheet. From tracking targets to budget battles, I've got a sheet for that. Let's get organized so you can know your sheet too. In this mini-series, we will work to know your budget sheet. This mini-series will walk you through setting up a spreadsheet to help you keep track of your income and expenses so you can start taking more control of where your money goes. This video will continue from where we left off last time, where we already listed our income, expenses, and have data totals calculated for every month. So from last time, we had regular expenses, utilities, and credit card. Next thing we should do is add those irregular bills, the ones that are charged annually or periodically. Although these bills are not billed every month, we should still track this so that we ensure we have the money when the time comes. So let's go ahead and insert some rows here. And add security cam, P.O. box, car insurance, bug spray, car maintenance things like oil changes. So we'll kind of spread these out so that it's a bit realistic, like the security cams we pay once a year in May. P.O. boxes every January. Car insurance we pay every 3 months. We pay bug spray once a year. Car maintenance can be a large one time a year. And just like all of the other expenses that we have entered so far, let's go ahead and create a total row and total it across the 12 months. Now you can see our spreadsheet's getting pretty big. Okay, at this point, let's go through and get the monthly average for each of these totals. Something to keep in mind is that you can average for over the 12 months, but there are going to be bills that you haven't paid yet or income you haven't made yet, so those totals will be zero. So what we're going to do is actually look for averages where there's actually a value greater than zero. So that way we can get an average of the months where we actually have some information logged. We'll be able to do this by using the average if formula and only averaging the values that are greater than zero. And of course, let's fix some of this formatting so that it all matches up. Now let's zoom out a little bit so that we can see the whole spreadsheet a little easier. And I'm just using Control scroll wheel to do that, but you can also use the zoom feature under the view menu. Okay, if we go through this, we can see income, we should use the average if, regular expenses, utilities, all average if, but irregular expenses, we do want to average it across all the months. And then credit card, also average if their amount is greater than zero. Same thing goes for total bills and total in out difference. So let's go ahead and move these over. And this gives us a general view of the averages for each of these types of expenses or income and the totals at the bottom. Before we continue, let's go ahead and tighten up the spreadsheet a little bit so that we can see the rows a little easier because we are starting to fill it up a bit. And this gives me a chance to do a little cleanup on the formatting. But okay, at this point, let's add a savings row where we have a certain amount in our account or in a savings that's building up and it's going up and down every month. So let's say we had $1,000 before January, and we will go ahead and roll that amount forward based on how much we had to pay in bills and the in and out difference every month so that we can kind of see where we're at with the amount that's actually sitting in our account. I will be formatting a little bit along the way to make this a little easier to read because we have a lot of data here now. Okay, so before we move on to adding irregular expenses and anything more elaborate, let's make a copy of this sheet so we have the original one and we can start modifying a newer version of it. We'll call it 2025 V2. Okay, so let's add a new sheet where we're going to do some calculations on the irregular expenses. If you need help being diligent or disciplined, it may be smart to create an account to separate the money for these bills to ensure you are setting aside enough every month. But in any case, let's take a look at this new sheet. We'll want to know what the expense is, how much it is, and how many months you have before needing to pay. For what the expense is, we already typed it up in our main budget spreadsheet, so let's go ahead and copy that over. Then let's enter what each of these invoice amounts are. And then let's go ahead and list how many months we have until each of these need to be paid. Now that we have the amount and months, we can go ahead and calculate how much we need to set aside monthly in order to properly pay these bills. So in our main budget spreadsheet, if you want to log how much you need to set aside each month, we can do a lookup on the amounts on this new sheet so we don't have to copy and paste. So if the calculation changes, you can just change it on the table on the irregular expenses sheet and it will reflect properly in the budget. Oops, just need to make sure that I'm actually hitting F4. So those dollar signs on the cells make it so that it's a fixed value, so it doesn't change as you paste. So if you put a formula in column B and paste it column C, it will change all the formulas over by one column. So if you hit F4 or put dollar signs in front of the letter and the number, it will keep that cell reference and not change it automatically for you based on where you're pasting. So you can put the dollar sign manually or keep hitting F4 as it rotates through the cell being locked down versus just the row or just the column. So I would normally not put the irregular expenses hold amount into my budget spreadsheet like this. I would actually keep the original and actually move the hold down below so that I can keep track on if I'm holding enough. So let's go ahead and shift this around a little bit. So we'll call this new section hold expenses because it's how much we're holding, not how much we're actually paying out. So let's go back to the original sheet and get the original irregular amounts back onto the budget spreadsheet. So we have the exact amount and when it needs to be paid out. And it looks like the total bills formula got a little wonky because I added some rows and I didn't come back and double check the totals. So let's clean this up a little bit. We need to make sure all the total expenses are included. Okay, now that that's all fixed, let's take a look at our hold expenses. And let's go ahead, because I like to format things, let's go ahead and highlight the cells where the money actually will need to leave our account so that we have a visual of how much we're putting aside each month and when the amount actually leaves our account. Okay, so that was the simple way to add this information to our budget sheet. But let's go back to the irregular expenses sheet and let's expand on that a little bit more so you have an even better idea of how much you should be saving and how much should be in your savings account before those bills are paid. Okay, I'll explain what I mean. So let's come over to the irregular expenses sheet and first we'll sum the monthly. That should total to the same as the monthly in our budget spreadsheet. Now let's start with taking the header of the months and copy that over so we don't have to retype that or reformat it. And then let's go ahead and copy the irregular expenses as is over so we can see exactly what is owed when. Once that's copied over, I'm going to do some simple math here of subtracting and adding the monthly amount so we can see month by month how much should be in your savings account before that bill is due. And of course, just a little formatting so that we can see exactly where the payouts happen. And we'll do this for each of the irregular expenses. Okay, with those calculations for how much we should have saved up each month, we should be able to sum everything up. We should get the total that should be in your savings, minimum, in order for you to properly pay your bills when it comes time. However, in our savings running total, the amount that had to be paid out that month is already deducted from it. So let's go ahead and do a total where we remove the amount that has already been paid out. We no longer have it in our savings. And for the months that we don't have anything to pay, we'll just copy the exact total down. Now we can take the total after paid and copy it into our budget spreadsheet. Or better yet, we can do a lookup so that we can get the value as we change any calculations, or if the amount changes, it will reflect on the budget spreadsheet. We'll go ahead and call this minimum savings, and we can delete that whole hold table now. And let's do a little bit of formatting. Okay, now there is visibility for all these expenses. We see how much we made, we see how much we paid, and how much needs to be held for upcoming payments. Okay, looking at all of these numbers, let's make this a little more realistic. Let's add, say in February we get a tax return. And to help with tracking our credit cards, we will also copy the average calculation for each of the credit card instead of just the total. And let's add some supplemental income to spruce up the numbers a little bit, just so we can play around with the charts and visualizations in preparation for the next episode. And then the credit card bills here are pretty unrealistic. Let's add a groceries credit card, one that we use just for groceries. And let's plump these numbers up a little. Let's go ahead and make sure that the credit card totals are accurate. And let's go ahead and do some randomizing on the groceries so that we have a little bit more realistic numbers as well. And with that, now we have the data and a clearer picture of what our ins and outs look like. So we'll want to circle back to our net amount. How much money do we actually have left over after all these bills? And with that, we now have a pretty decent version of our budget sheet. Check out the next video in this mini-series to see how we will expand and grow this spreadsheet so that we can add some conditional formatting and visualizations to help us digest this data. This series has 4 episodes planned, but if you've got questions or requests, leave them in the comments and I'll dig through them all and whip up a part 5 based on what you want added to the budget sheet, because your sheet should work for you. Got a spreadsheet win or a formula fail? Drop it in the comments and share your sheet. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep your cells clean and your formulas tight. And remember, don't just use your sheet, know your sheet.